Hi, and welcome today to Celebrity Customer Experience Riffs with me, Jill Raff, where we riff on anything and everything related to customer experience or employee experience, because I do believe that employee experience will lead to customer experience, whether good or bad. I want to thank you today for investing your time with me to explore the employee and customer experience and why they're so intrinsically entwined, why, in fact, they are really inseparable. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I know that's one of our most valuable resources. And I want to encourage you to join in to maximize your time here. Join in our conversation, comment along the way. We'll be able to incorporate you into our conversation and take notes. And please share this. Take a moment now to share it with anyone who you feel will also benefit and maybe want to participate in the conversation as well. And of course, if you're watching the replay, feel free to tag myself and my guests. So without further ado, I want to bring on my guest today, Michelle Brigman. Thanks for joining me, Michelle.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Jill.
Oh, it's great. I'm really looking forward. We've had some great conversations already. And I want to first just give you a little bit of background. Michelle is recognized as a top 10 CX professional of the year 2021, IT executive year 2017, and recipient of multiple corporate innovation awards. She's a change leader driven by passion for CX excellence with a vision to recognize opportunities and increase satisfaction across fast-paced organizations such as 7-Eleven, Citibank, and Dell. She's currently a consultant for Medallia, helping brands deliver greater customer experiences. Michelle is also the co-host of Hard Won Wisdom podcast. We'll hear about that. EVP of Operations for Women's Leadership Network, and the founder of Brave Balanced Women, empowering executive women to find harmony while living their best lives. Now, who doesn't want some of that, right?
So that's exactly
So,
why I got started, right?
yeah, I mean, I think women especially really just have the natural need for that balance, but we're always juggling many plates. So um, looking forward to hearing about that. Before we dive into some of the meat and of what we're going to talk about today with resiliency in CX, Michelle, I know you have a very interesting and powerful statement about what influenced you and your defining moment that brought you into the journey of CX. And I would love for you to share that with everyone.
Absolutely. So, you don't know what you don't know. And then later you look back on these moments in life and you're like, I think that was kind of a big deal. That was a big deal. And I think one of mine was I'm from Texas and I grew up in a very small town. And I loved going to our pharmacy because it was a locally owned pharmacist with a husband and his wife, and they ran everything. And it had such an impact on me that I decided that I wanted to go to school and become a pharmacist. Now, my first year in the pre-pharmacy program was awful. So the thing about me is I I am not precise at all. I like process, but I am not precise. So had I been, trying to figure out how to figure out dosage and people, we would have more people in cemeteries. Like it would be awful. Like I would be awful at that. And I tried to sit back and go, what the heck was I thinking? Like, why did I ever think this would be something that would be a fit for me? And I realized that what it was my pharmacist, Dr. Barry, because every time I walked in there, he would come out from behind the counter, he and his wife, Michelle, how are you doing? How's the football team? I was, whatever activity I was involved in, he knew about it. And he would just take a minute and visit. And I felt so special when I went in there. And I just thought, I think I want to make people feel that way. So, hence the reason I start in school as a pharmacist. Had he been owned the grocery store, I'm sure I would have wanted to be a grocer. Like I think it had absolutely nothing to do with the work, but I really connected with him, and I think that's what's interesting for me about people who are in customer experience. The people not that have the job title, but the people who are born to be advocates for customers or employees. It is something inside of you that you need to serve, and you're very much driven by how you're making other people feel. Do they feel better walking away than they did coming towards me?
100%. Oh my gosh. And I think that is the question. We can start off right there with that golden nugget, right? Write that down. That's the question you want to always be asking, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're selling, product, service. How are we impacting the people who come to do business with us? Are they walking away better, more educated, uh, problem resolved, whatever it is? Are they walking away better than when they first came to
Mhm.
us? That is
Yeah.
really great advice.
And I saw that carry through even in kind of my next role was just again young. I'm working retail in a cosmetics department. And what I learned there was the people that stopped by, whether it was a man looking to buy a fragrance for himself or his, his wife or girlfriend, or if it was a woman looking to get the next best shade of lipstick, I had a really great repeat client base. And it wasn't because they didn't need that lipstick. But what I realized is when they came to my counter, my job was to help them feel beautiful. And oftentimes, maybe they had a bad day at work. Maybe they had an argument with their significant other. And it was almost like the bartender of beauty. I don't know, but it was
I like that.
incredibly. I just had this great referral business, and they bought, but it really came down to, I think, the really recognizing early on, no matter what it was I was doing, that was all about the relationship and were you building meaningful and significant relationships with the people
Mm,
around you. And again, I think this applies as a leader. I think this applies as you think about strategy around CX and what are you implementing? Are the actions I'm taking right now conveying that I care about you, that you are important, and that you matter? And if they're not, then don't be confused or surprised whenever you don't get the results you want.
yes. Oh my gosh, 100%. And I think you touched on a really important point. Those of us who, especially those in hospitality, but I would like to think that it extends beyond those in those industries, that anytime that you have taken on the responsibility, and it is the responsibility to represent your company, your brand in that way, anytime you've taken on that responsibility to be of service to a customer, or even how you interact with your fellow employees, you're a part of that company, you're a part of that culture. And it's up to you to then represent it and to put out that energy to whoever you're serving, that you're there really to help them and to serve them. And agreed, relationship. I'm all about relationships, connection, culture. I have a saying that interactions, well, starting out with, my one of my mottos is transforming transactions into interactions. So much of what we
Beautifully.
do is a transaction. It's an exchange of goods and services for money. And you go to buy something, it's a transaction. In real estate, I'm a licensed real estate agent. We refer to each of those deals as a transaction. And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, let's look at the elephant in the room. Why are we calling it that when we say we're not transactional agents, right? So I do believe we need to transform those transactions into genuine interactions. And so my belief
Eh,
is when we have interactions, they create relationships, and real relationships creates connection, not connections plural, like, benefit of, personal or professional benefit, but true connection to another human being. And that connection ultimately equals profit. And again, profit financially, but also just profit personally, and what it does to our soul and how we connect to other people.
Oh,
And I
I
think
love
that,
it, and I love the fact that you commented on relationship because I think that as you're thinking about the people that you're bringing as you're thinking about what you do to represent the company you work for, and you think about what's the brand message I'm saying, I think it's also important for the brand and the manager to make sure that you are finding people who are going to build the
mm,
relationship with your partners, clients, customers, that represents what you stand for. And I think that, oftentimes when we're having these conversations around building teams, we're so focused on a skill set or an attribute that you miss out on these other skills that right now I think are even it's more apparent that they're so critically important. And
Mm,
that's around, again, the connection you can make with another person, whether it's short, a short relationship or a long relationship, but can you connect in a real, honest, authentic way?
agreed. And I think that's key. When I say real relationships, I
Mhm,
play
I
on
love
the
it.
the spelling. It's because it needs to be exactly what you just said,
Mhm.
authentic, genuine, honest, one with integrity. People feel that. It's even a subconscious thing that we pick up, I think. So that is so important. And yes, I think today especially, I mean, tell me what you think, Michelle, with our problems with staffing right now and the pandemic, everyone's just what I call warm body hiring. Like they're
Mhm.
using this whole system of warm body hiring, and it might excuse me, might fill a seat in the meantime that you need, but ultimately you're taking a huge risk by putting someone in a position that could negatively impact everyone else. And it's a real short term strategy. And ultimately, if you want a cohesive team, if you want long term longevity and retention with your company, you need to have people who are fully in alignment. Are you seeing this happening a lot now with what's going on with the
I see
pandemic?
exactly the same thing you mentioned where
Mhm.
companies are struggling to keep them. People are leaving because they don't feel valued. I also think that as you're looking at, or something that has worked, right, is as you're looking at what you're doing to understand who that person is. The person is looking for what is it that I value so I can make sure that I seek that out when I'm looking for the company I want to work for. But I also think as the manager in the company, you've got to make sure you're continuously creating that environment where people thrive, right? So it is my responsibility to understand what makes me happy and to create that every day. But the company has to meet me somewhere. And just your question made me think of a story or an experience that I had that I think could apply. One of the companies that I had started working for right in the beginning, whenever I went in, just immediately, I was warned the morale is awful. The morale with
Mm,
this team is awful. And I mean, when you walk into a room and the team culture is caustic, it takes about 5 seconds and you feel it, the energy that's given off. But whenever I would sit down and talk with these people, they were amazing. Like they were ambitious, they were great people with great skills. And it was funny because I was like, What happened? Like what's behind this and how do we fix it?" And as we were sitting there talking and I was listening to them talk about, basically there was a bit of a victim mindset. We're not included, nobody
mm,
listens to what we say. And so I went through an exercise with them where I really sat down and said, as a group, what do you want to be known for? What do you stand for? What do you as a team want to be known for? And you can apply this at an individual level as well. And they came up with this big list. They were very clear, like they weren't
mm.
confused. They knew what they wanted to be known for. And then we sat down and talked about the behaviors every single day and put it in a box. Does this ladder up to what you want to be known for? Yes or no? And if no, why not? Or could you tweak it to be something different? And one of those, like just as a simple example, was, we have all of this great data about customer experience and nobody's using it.
Yeah.
And okay, well, what are you sharing it? Well, we send the report. That's not sharing it.
No.
Are you understanding what's important to them and then understanding the data you have and how your client, your stakeholder could find value? How can you help them? Well, no. So it was funny because after about three of these tactics, they just all kind of laughed and said, "Yeah, yeah, we're not we're not doing enough." Like it became, they looked at the mirror and they went, "There's so much more we can do." And it was pretty awesome because everybody rolled up their sleeves and did the work, and they started changing things. And it was funny to watch that particular team because they came from a place of just so negative and
Mhm.
unhealthy too. They became the envy of the organization, and everybody would people then started stopping by going, there's always something cool and exciting going on in here. What
Mhm.
everybody was happy. And it was just a simple exercise of really understanding what do you value and then what are you doing to help bring that. So yes, the company has to help enable and activate that, but the individual and the team has to come together and understand what it is they want. And I think that the little things like that, I think, can address back to the original question around people leaving because they don't feel valued. I think there's a lot we can do better in order
Mhm.
to let people know, keep them there, which is good for everybody. It's good for the people, it's good for the company, it's good for your customers.
Yeah, I always wonder, is it a matter of the companies just being, so busy putting out fires, doing their day to day, doing what they've always done, which is a big problem. If you can't today do what you did before and
Mhm.
succeed. That's just a known thing,
No.
especially related to people. But is it that, or is it a lack of awareness? Because obviously you have to first be aware, or is it that they're also checking those boxes and saying, well, we did a survey and we gathered the information, but then they don't use it. And interestingly, it's a conversation I'm having right now with another company about a partnership because they gather the data,
Mhm.
they get the feedback to understand how the company's being perceived, who's engaging with it, who's attracted to it, who do they want to reach. And then they gather all this data and then they give it to the company and then they're left, okay, now what? And so then our goal is that then I come in and say, okay, let's take this data and now let's implement some
Right.
of these changes. Let's focus on how do we target to get where you want to be using the data that we know already and finding out internally. And if you don't speak to, it's amazing. On one of these calls, they were saying this other company previously did a survey with this huge company, one of the big ones, consulting firms, and nobody stopped to ask the internal people working in the company what they thought about it. And I'm like I just it's one of those
No,
like
that's happens a
bumps,
lot.
right?
But
Like
that
it's
happens a lot.
so common sense. I just can't wrap my head around it.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
I think, your question was, what is it? I think it's all of those things. I think sometimes we ask the wrong question. I think oftentimes we ask the question, we look at what we're doing. So are we busy doing? Yes or no? And all of these companies would probably tell you, yes, we're busy doing.
Mhm.
But I think the right question is, or a better question is it effective? Is what we're
Yeah.
doing effective? And if it's not effective, then we need to go back to the drawing board. And in fact, whenever one of the companies I had worked for, um, I tell you, I swear, I've got lots of battle scars. So it's funny as you trigger some thought. But there was one particular company I'd started a job, and again, I'm going out and trying to meet my stakeholders, and it was a contact center leader. So he ran a very large organization. His background was in finance. And I went in and I was trying to figure out, all right, how do I bring you effective information to do what you need to do? And it was funny because he looked at me and he had it's been a while. So it was like a big 3-inch binder. He had this big binder and he kind of drops it on the table. And he said, Michelle, you want to help me? And I said, yeah. How can I help you? And he picks this binder up and he starts fumbling through the pages. And it was full of reports. Now he ran a large contact center. It's full of reports. He goes, CX report, I don't know, what is it on page 84? And he's flipping around to it and he goes, Michelle, see this? I have lots of reports. Ask me if I know how healthy my business is, because I'm going to tell you I don't. And it's not because I'm stupid. If you can help me figure out how healthy my business is, then I want to hear what you have to say. Until then, you're giving me one more thing to stick in this binder that I really can't
Mm.
use. And that moment changed everything in terms of how I was how I was interacting and how I was bringing forward information and
Mm,
insights to my stakeholder. Because before, I'm thinking, well, you should care about CX, customer loyalty. I was using all those words. It wasn't that
mhm.
he didn't care, he didn't know how to use it. So, yes, I think it's all of these things. And it's about being effective and understanding how do you need to change the way you are engaging and presenting information in a way that makes it effective, because they want to do what's right. They
Mm.
just don't know how, and they don't have it's too much work to try to figure out how to do it because they've got 1,000 other things going on.
Yeah, they're overwhelmed. That is
Yes.
really, really great. I love it. That is gold right there. It's not, drop a lot of the lingo and get to the heart of what matters to them, and that is the health of their
Mhm.
company, the profitability of their company, and showing them how do you bounce back from that. So actually, that's a great segue um, about resiliency. Not only in the light of the pandemic, but I do believe that resiliency is always going to be the key quality and attribute to being successful in any undertaking, personal or professional for that matter, and why we call this resiliency of CX. So, Michelle, in your mind, tell us why you feel resiliency is so important and what the benefits are.
Well, so I think, well, back to the pandemic, right? Let's just use that because it was such an example that it
It's
hit everyone at
continues
the
actually.
same time,
Yeah.
right? But everything is unpredictable, and we operate in a way that we sort of get stuck in our own ideas, whether it's a strategy, a roadmap, a presentation, a message. We get stuck in terms of getting to the finish line, keeping everything as is, that when
Mhm.
you get that unexpected question in your presentation, when you lose resources on your project strategy roadmap and you now suddenly don't have the funds to do it, you have a pandemic, somebody quits. These things are happening, and it's a natural part of the process that is out of your control. You cannot avoid it. And if you aren't thinking about how can I be nimble and shift, how can I be, I'll use the word agile,
Agile.
how can
Mhm.
I adjust and be resilient so I don't completely fall apart in those moments, but I may not have all the answers. It's not that you have to have everything planned out, but it's about how quickly can you stop, take a breath, bring in, assess the situation, surround the people, be with the people around you to mobilize everyone to say, look, this has happened. Instead of scurrying around worrying about it or panicking, it's time to roll up our sleeves. And if we've built that muscle memory that allows us to understand how to adjust and think
Mhm.
and problem solve and collaborate and challenge one another, then we're going to be so much more prepared to make it through quickly. And if you think about the pandemic and you think about just the companies you work for, you either did it well or you didn't. And you either were able to do it quickly or you weren't, right? And that's a good just sort of indication of how healthy around and how resilient is your company right now. But then I'd also say you as a human being, we handled this pandemic very differently. Some people immediately the moment opened up and they've got their new gig, they're trying new things, they're spending more time with family, they're able to sort of embrace this moment, and others went into deep depression. They weren't sure how to navigate, and I think it's just as important to recognize how to make sure, again, I'm building my muscle memory about resilience around myself, because that will apply to how I'm able to do it effectively in business.
I love that you use the description of muscle memory. I mean, it is so key from sports to our brain, right? Using it in a way to as a fallback, right? It's our second nature. And to your point of before the pandemic, either we were doing it right or we weren't. We either established the right set of um, guidelines, alignment within our people, systems so that it's repeated all the time. So it becomes second nature. One of the things, that's a part of the work that I do is creating these types of systems within each organization. So it's
Mhm.
their unique system, but that they make sure that they are developing that culture through their values being repeated action items every day. So the behaviors support that. And when it's repeated over and over and over, you do create that muscle memory. So if your company did that before, fantastic. You're probably bouncing back and are more resilient than ever, and more quickly and efficiently moving into the next segment, and the way the world is working and is not going back, right, going forward, really focusing on their people and on people's experiences, employee and customer. It will finally not just be one of those soft skills. I
Mhm.
hate the word
I hate
in
it.
terms soft. There's nothing soft about
Mm-mm.
people, or those skills that are people related. I call them essential skills because they
Love it.
truly are essential to have a successful business. And so I want to encourage everyone, if you've already built that into your business, then use that as a fallback. Let that be your muscle memory, and then tweak it to go forward. But and if you haven't, now is the time to stop and get support. And I'm not saying it has to be me or someone else, but get external support who can come in and see your business, your challenges, what's working, what's not, with fresh eyes and ears, and be able to help you figure out, how do you create something so that you can start building that muscle memory now going forward, with the values that you want. Um, and clearly, it's affecting productivity and engagement and
Yes.
results of all kinds. So how do you see it also, Michelle, as a way for, you touched on how it helps to evolve yourself personally, but also maybe more specifically, with your team, with some particular strategy with your programs?
Absolutely. Well, I think first of all, your actions are gonna affect how your team handles a situation. And that again doesn't mean you have to have all these answers. You can be honest and seek advice from your team, but how they see you handling crisis
Mhm.
is really important. So I know things that just during the pandemic specifically was sitting down and you know having the team come together and really just support one another based on how they were feeling and talking about it. Now, you've got to have a good culture to where folks trust opening up, right, in a situation like that. But we started doing and this was I was at 7-Eleven at the time the pandemic hit. And one of the things the team started doing is we started meeting on Fridays and we were putting together vision boards. We were putting together setting personal goals that we were having like a meeting, and it was optional. It was happening every Friday. You either showed up or you didn't. If you wanted to bring a friend, you could too. But it was a matter of giving an outlet to the team to express themselves creatively, make sure that they were balancing this crisis because you had, right, the single parents dealing with the young kids at home who, they're trying to play teacher and work and having flexibility. But it gave everybody an outlet to come in and sort of take a deep breath, no expectations, self care, learning, celebrating one another, and supporting one another. And it was interesting how much of the person was showing up and to see the team coming together on a whole different level to bond and be there to support one another. And I mean, that was just something that I thought was frankly magical. It was
Mm.
magical to witness. And it wasn't something that like I'm not leading these activities. It was the team leading them. Everybody sort of said next week, hey, I want to do this. We got into really deep within DEI. And I got to tell you, one of the team members, she was an analyst on the team, super quiet. She started facilitating these deep conversations around DEI topics. She freaking blew us away. Like she was amazing at it. And here you were honoring the person she was. She was
Mm.
honoring the team.
Love that.
And we wouldn't miss that thing at all because it was powerful and we were all learning and growing through it. And again, I think going back to just resilience, it's learning new skills, being curious, opening, practicing, holding one another accountable, and honoring one another in a way that you feel trusted that the people standing on your right and your left, they're there to help you be your best and not there to judge,
Yes.
to compete. They're there to help walk alongside and be better together.
Yeah, and support each other. Yeah, to put each other
100%.
up. Yeah, I love that, and it seems like such common sense to me. It's just amazing, which is part of my biggest goal, like how to bring that to leadership and have them understand the same way they feel when they're a
Yeah.
part of a sports team, right? Think about
Yes.
anything growing up throughout school. Whenever you were a part of a team, how good that made you feel and how empowered it made you feel. And what you just talked about, was entrusting, non-judgmental. These are all huge words, key words that I hope everyone's really hearing and taking away, because trust, it's part of my E3 formula. uh, Educate, engage, and entrust. And when you entrust your peoples, you're empowering them. And I love that here was someone who was an introvert, had this opportunity, who probably was always sitting down, and there were all these extroverts talking over her in most usual cases. And because of the
Yes.
scenario, had the opportunity to open up and shine from who she is. And that's definitely a beautiful thing. I
Well,
love it.
I was going to say one thing, Jill, about something that I hear from you often, and you mentioned it earlier, and I think it's just a really important point that I'd call out again. Something that you talk about is this based on what your company values. And I think that's really important to recognize that this isn't this one size fits all approach. What worked, what I just shared and what worked in my environment, that worked for that culture. Something else that wouldn't have worked at some of the other companies I was with. I had to use different tactics. And I think what you shared earlier is it's not one size fits all, but it's about having support, whether it's through somebody like you or through within your own internal teams, but can honor and recognize what makes this company, team, group unique. What do we value? And building out the systems, the processes, the strategies that will work in that unique environment. And I think
Exactly.
a lot of times we go to these conferences, we hear, okay, these are the 3 things we need to do. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but kind of giving yourself permission to go experiment, explore, and figure out what is the right fit.
Yes, 100%. It's always, when you take any class or when you're listening to any webinar or reading a book, you extract from that what resonates with you personally or with your company's culture. And it's a matter of applying that in a way and then trying it, implement, look at it, evaluate, tweak,
Yes.
re-implement. And it needs to be that constant cycle, I think, to really happen. Um, wow, time flies, as I know it would. So you've given us a lot of great things to think about, a lot of great takeaways. Is there anything else you'd like to add that you've learned along the way with your position now as senior director at Medallia? Your involvement in your other organizations. You do so much. You're quite an impressive woman with so many points of value, and along your journey as you continue to grow with this podcast that you're on. I want to give you a moment also to talk about that. But is there anything else specifically that you might want to share that's practical, a strategy or something that people could implement right away to try to get some quick results?
I think you're never you're never beyond learning, and be curious, listen to other people. Do not think that because you're the leader by title, because you're at the top of the box, that you're the I always say I'm not the smartest person in the room. And I
Mhm.
love whenever I can surround myself with people that I trust, that are smart, that are teaching me something every day. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not. I know what I don't know yet, and I'm willing to go learn and figure it out. And I think that that would be sort of overall the nugget I would give in terms of just a good life skill that has taken me to places I never would have imagined. And which would lead me into just the other question you asked about some of this other stuff I'm doing. I think it's kind of funny. I was very burnout. I was dealing with true burnout, and I had to go do a lot of just self reflection and figure out what was important to me. And through that, I ended up getting a health coach certification, not because I wanted to become a health coach, but because I needed to hold myself accountable to what I wanted my life to look like. And I I needed the process to force me to apply all these things I do every day on my job, but when I walk in my door, I don't apply it in my own life. So I needed a system that would allow me to do that. And as I was going through it, and that's what helped me found Brave Balanced Women. And as I was going through that though, and talking about it, I realized that there were a whole lot of other people feeling the same way I felt. And so that led me on a journey which I'm still on and is amazing. But I also reconnected with the 20 years ago. I had an upset customer that I helped on the phone that turned into someone that is now my co-host on a podcast. So you never know that customer you're dealing with. You never know where these things lead. But turned out we launched a podcast together earlier this year called Hard Won Wisdom, and we're bringing forward these trailblazing women who are, I mean, these are the people who were the firsts, and they are telling their real story. And it isn't telling it in a way to say, helping the people who are in the trenches right now to learn and grow and become their best. And they are beautiful, raw, emotional stories. And I would love people to tune in and listen, because I don't care if you're a man or a woman, there are so many beautiful nuggets. And I am just taking all of this in, because I don't know where it's all going. All I know is I'm in a really good place. And I also can say that even with all the things I'm doing now, I do not feel overwhelmed. And so that's the other takeaway, is the difference of when you start bringing more of the things that you love into your life, you let go of the things that just you don't. And by
Mm.
doing that, I now have more time than ever, even though if you listen to what I was involved in, you would think I have less. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So bring in more of what makes you happy, let go of the
Mm.
things that don't.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that, and everyone needs to hear that, right? Male or female, it doesn't matter. Every human being needs to hear that, especially I think the pandemic has helped exacerbate this feeling of
Mhm.
overwhelm and anxiety, and filling it with the things that we love and bring us joy. No one promises us tomorrow. We don't know what will bring, and I think that's right. I want to just point out to everyone, uh, to reach Michelle. I've got on the screen both her podcast information, so please be sure to check that out. I can't wait to listen to many of the episodes. I've heard little snippets about Hard Won Wisdom, and that's on the screen, as well as how to reach her on LinkedIn, and it's through her name, Michelle L. Brigman.
Or just
So,
Michelle Brigman on LinkedIn.
oh, it is just Michelle. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm looking at my notes on Instagram. Just Michelle Brigman. Thank you. That's what's written on the screen. So great. Um, gosh, I- I'm. I'll have to have you on. There are many guests. I'm like, I want to do round 2, round 3. I mean, it's just such a joy to speak with you, and so inspirational. So many great points for people to just be able to kind of take that deep breath is what I
Mhm.
feel, with talking to you, and just recognize it's just taking one step at a time. It's being human. It's going to all those places, asking the questions, and then zipping it and listening, um, and just really coming from a place of no ego, but truly curiosity. And just wrapping up with, I think that your last point was so valid, that staying curious will help us throughout everything in life, business or personal, and keep life interesting, which we all need. Life is short, and be able to give back personally and professionally. And I thank you for giving us your time and a lot of your wisdom, Michelle.
Well, thanks, Jill. And I love what you're doing. And it has been an absolute pleasure to be able to share some time with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask Michelle to just hang with us for a second, and say goodbye to her, though. And let me see here. Okay. Um, that was amazing. I hope everyone will go back and watch the replay. Usually replays where more of it happens, but even if you were able to watch here and didn't comment, go back, because there's so many great tips there. Thank you for joining as usual. I want to encourage you also to share this with others that you feel would benefit. And speaking of asking questions and listening, I try to walk my walk. So if there's someone that you want to hear from, if there's a specific guest that you want me to interview, or a certain topic or challenge that you're dealing with in your business that you want discussed, please DM me, reach out to me, or just create a post and let me know what that is, and we will make that happen. And I just want to also direct everyone, for me, I always forget to put my information up here, jillraff.com. My name is my website. And just go to that first button, click on the Hi Jill, how can you help me button? And it will allow you to tell me more about you in a very fun way. I think you'll see is unique. And check it out. You'll see what I mean. Let me know what's going on, how I can help you, even if you just want to talk about your challenges, and see if I can give you guidance. If not, I can certainly refer you to someone who can. So I look forward to hearing more about your business and your business success, and look forward to seeing you next week again here, same time, Thursdays, 12 noon Central Time, for Celebrity Customer Experience. And thank you again for joining everybody today. And I will see you soon.